Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of SoTellUs Time. We are really excited to be here with you guys today. As you know, last week was Thanksgiving, so hopefully you guys had a phenomenal time. Got to spend some time with family or friends or both, and just had a great break. And, like me, I'm ready to go on a diet, and we haven't even had Christmas yet. I mean, goodness gracious. I definitely gained at least 10 pounds. And for some reason, in my older age, it's not coming off. So I'm going to need to work on that. I got to do something about that. Well, we've got a great episode for you guys today. Hey, it is the end of the year. It is December. It is December. So now in December, it is the last month of the year. 2025 is almost over. Oh my goodness. That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. It is about to be 2026. That's nuts. But we want to finish the year strong. So we've got a great episode for you guys today. We're talking about the power of your story, business story, maybe even personal story is the most powerful marketing tool that you have. So we're going to be talking about how to attract customers and build trust and drive massive business growth utilizing your story. People always say, facts tell, stories sell, right? You've heard that saying before. And if you haven't, well, then you know what? Guess what? I invented it. Just kidding. I definitely did not invent that. But let me tell you, it's so true. Stories are what sells. And whether that is about your products or about you, people, I say all the time, are buying you, to be honest. So they buy you, they like the service, or they buy you and they like the product. Okay. So let's jump in. Let's let Troy get going here. The man with the brains, the one and only Troy Howard.
Oh, gall. If I'm the man with the brains, we're in trouble here. All right, let's go.
Well, we both can't be beauties, and I'm the beauty, so you better be the brains.
True. All right, so let's talk about why storytelling sells, right? I mean, it's just literally we're wired for stories, right? We are emotional creatures, and we always look at emotion before logic. So, it's just the way our minds work. And so we need to make sure that we are utilizing that technique when it comes to our sales process, right? So it also builds credibility, right? Credibility is built through experience, not claims. And I want you to remember that as we're kind of going through this, right? We're looking to get credibility. We're looking to build trust. And that is done through experience, not just claims that are made. So like Trevor said, stories create trust. They create a connection. And they give a sense of shared values, right? Between you and the people that are listening to your story. It's really, so like as a small business owner, think about like if you have your why did you start your business? Why do you do what you do? That's what resonates with your customers, not necessarily just your products. So the very best companies out there, they have a story and they have a why, and they push that in all of their marketing. So it's really important. Now, the biggest mistake that business owners make in their marketing is that they're sharing a resume instead of sharing a story. And I want you to think about that, right? How many times have you heard a business owner or someone list all of their accomplishments instead of telling a narrative, right? Telling a story. And I want you to think about that. So think about someone who maybe is, on TV or, at an event that you're speaking at, and they just give a list of accomplishments. I started my business when I was this years old, and we've done this much in revenue, and we've grown 123% over the last blah, 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 blah.
Boring.
Right? Totally boring, nothing to connect to, and it's literally just their resume. People don't care about that, right? People don't connect with general or generic mission statements. They don't connect with the awards that you've won. They don't connect with technical jargon. what they connect with is real challenges that you've gone through, turning points in your life and in your business, and also vulnerable moments that show that you're human. Those are the things that people connect with. And that's what you want to focus on in your story. So we're going to talk about the 4-part framework for crafting your authentic business story. And this is how you're going to create that story. And then we're going to talk about how you utilize that story in all your marketing. So number 1, here are the 4 parts. Number 1 part is the spark. What started it all? What started your business? So the moment you knew things needed to change in your business, or you wanted to build something, what is that moment, right? So an example might be like a daycare owner who created their very first center because she wanted a place she would trust with her own kids, right? So imagine that story. It's like, look, I had these 3 beautiful children. I love them so much, but I had to go back to work. And I was like, I need someplace safe, someplace that I could trust my kids with. And I visited a bunch of different places and I couldn't find any that I felt like I could trust, right? So that's the moment that I realized I needed to create that place, not only for my kids, but for other people's kids, right? Amazing spark, that moment of when it all started. Okay. So this part 2 is the struggle, right? The obstacles you faced. These might be mistakes that you made. It might be, fears that you had. It might be the messy middle, right? Of the struggle that you went through of like, I tried and I tried and I tried and I didn't get it right, but then I finally got it right. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. The struggle, why it matters. The struggle creates relatability because everybody has struggled. Right? So if we take that same story of our daycare owner, right? And they talk about maybe the mistakes that they made. So that mistake might be, I went and I found a center that was close to my home and it was going to be easy for me between my house and work. And I put my kids in there and, my kids weren't happy. And the next thing my kid got spanked by one of the workers or got, bit by one of the kids multiple times and the school wasn't doing anything to take care of it, right? That might be the struggle. That might be the mistake. I just put them somewhere, and I thought they would be safe. I assumed this was a good business, so they must take care of the children. And that's the mistake I made, right? You can see the relatability there in that story, right? And so that struggle is what helps people connect to you and relate to you. Part 3 of this, or the next step, is the shift. What you learned and how you grew from it, right? So this is going to be the insight or the breakthrough that changed your direction. This is where your listeners are going to think, I could do that too, right? They're going, yes, that's the thing. That's the difference. So again, we're following this same story of, that insight or that breakthrough is like, look, nobody's going to care about my kids more than me. So maybe what I need to do is step away from this other career that I have, and I need to create, a childcare center where I know that my kids are going to be safe and everybody else's kids are going to be safe too, right? So you can see that insight, that breakthrough of I changed my life. I had this successful career over here, but the safety of my children was more important than that career. And that's so important to me that's why you want your kids to be with me too, right? So that's the shift that you're going to create, and then part 4 is the success, where you are today and who you help. Right? So at this point, you make it about the customer, not about your ego. It's not about how awesome you are. It's about creating something for that customer. And you're going to show how your journey now benefits other people. So again, the end of that story for our daycare owner is, I started, my first daycare center and it was difficult, but I knew that my children were safe. And then I had other people that were like experiencing the exact same thing that I was experiencing. And they started bringing their kids there as well. And their kids were safe. And then it grew from there. You know, now we filled up our entire center and we opened up another center because we wanted to make sure that kids were safe, not only right around our little area, but in the city next to us. And now we have 5 centers in the 5 cities around us. And we're providing this great service to all of these parents where they know that their children are going to be safe every single day, and they're going to be happy, and they're going to have a wonderful experience, right? That's the success that we've done. So do you see those 4 parts? We'll just go over that real quick again. You've got the spark, right? The moment that you knew something needed to change. The struggle. You know, we don't want to hear, none of us want to hear the story about the person that they just tried something and it immediately worked and they were a billionaire.
Yeah.
Right? How many movies have you watched about that where you're like, oh yeah, check this out. This guy just did one thing and it worked and he became a billionaire and it was awesome. No, nobody wants to pay attention to that story, right? Then you have the shift, right? Where you have that breakthrough moment and things change in your life. And then you have the success, right? What is the success that you've created? And that success is not your success. That success is the success of your customers, right? What are they getting out of your experience or out of your story? Okay. How does it benefit them? So how do you tell your story without oversharing? And this is really important, right? You want to make sure that you give guardrails when it comes to your story, because you want to be honest, but not raw, meaning that you don't want to give them everything about the story. You don't want to share everything, right? You need to be honest with them, but you got to hold back, you know, maybe some of the stuff that was not too good, right? That might dissuade them. That might put a doubt in their mind of like, well, oh, wait a minute. Well, what about that? Like they said this, right? So be very honest, but you know, not raw. You want to make sure that your story makes sense, that it flows, and that everything goes well together, right? You want to share the lessons that you learned, not the wounds, right? We don't want to get into the wounds. You know, that's important. And you want to keep the story focused on the listener's benefit, right? Too many people out there share a story and they focus on themselves, right? And their whole point of sharing their story is to make them look really, really good and successful. But that's not what people care about, right? You want to be focused on your listener's benefit. What are they getting out of this story that you're sharing with them? And you also want to avoid long tangents. Every moment should serve the message. That's really, really important. I'm going to share something real quick. There's one person I know who, like, when they tell a story, I always tease them when they tell a story, because when they tell a story, the story might be about something that happened last week, but I swear the story, like it's, and I'm exaggerating here, but the story always starts with, I was born in 1976. And it's like, wait a minute. Like, I don't need to know, you know, from back when you were born. I just need to know about last week. What happened last week? Well, I know, but I got to give you the backstory. And it's like, no, you don't.
Totally.
So make sure, you know, that you avoid long tangents. You don't need to go too far back in your story. And you also need to avoid those tangents where you just kind of veer off here and left. And then you try to wrap it all up together at the very end and put a pretty bow on it. You don't need that. Just focus on the story and make sure that every single part, every moment of your story needs to serve the message that you're doing. That's really important. All right, now let's talk about some practical ways to use your story in your business, right? How are you going to integrate your story into your everyday marketing? And a lot of business owners struggle at this part. So I'm going to give you several different ways that you can do it. Number one, your website about page, right? You should have your story on there so that people can learn about you and about, you know, this great story. You also want to maybe make an origin story video. Video is one of the best ways to share a story. And then that video can be utilized on your social media sites, on your website, all over the place, right? So create that video. Sales presentations, that's another great place to have your story, right? because it's a part of your sales process. So include the story in that presentation. Social media posts is another great spot. That's what people like about social media. They're going there to learn, right? And to share. So sharing through your social media posts is a great way to do it. Your email welcome sequences, right? When you're introducing your business for the very first time to somebody, how are you sharing your story through those emails? And again, that video we talked about, that's a great way to share that story in the email. Give them that video right there. Speaking engagements. If you do any speaking for your business, sharing your story from stage, again, one of the best ways to connect with an audience very quickly and get them to want to engage with you, right? Also, when you're doing like networking, if you're going to networking events, having that story ready to go and sharing that is a great way to connect. Also, podcast guest appearances, right? Having a podcast, who do you want on your podcast? You want people with a great story, people that are going to, intrigue and entertain the listeners. So having that story ready for those as well. And then also, you may not have thought of this one, but employee onboarding, right? Sharing your story and the story of your company helps you build culture. It helps those new employees understand who you are and how they should act and be as an employee of that company. So those are several different ways that you can use this story in your marketing. All right. Real quick, Trevor, anything that you want to add before we give out the homework?
I like the culture. I like the employee onboarding to really help your employees understand what the culture of this company is, why you started it, why you are where you are today, and why you focus on the things that you focus on, right? I think that's a really good one. And people would have they'd find better employees, I think, if they did that in the hiring process. All right. Well, let's kind of recap. Your story builds emotional connection. So you want to connect with people because that's what they're buying is, again, they're buying you. They're not buying the product. They're buying you. And if you think about anybody that you follow on social media, any shows that you watch, any of the products that you buy, think about the late night commercials, right? Think about the late night commercials. They always had this great story and this charisma. You were buying them and buying the product, basically. So they had the right person on there to get you to buy that product. And so think about that. That's what you want to do. You want to create an emotional connection with your customers, and you will 100% sell so much more. It positions you as a credible and reliable source, right? You are the expert in whatever this is, the industry, the product, the service. You need to be the expert. And having that story and connecting with them will help them believe that. And then it inspires people to trust you and then take action. So again, thinking of those late night commercials, they were great. They inspired people. They got people excited, and then people took action and they purchased. So that's what you guys really want to be doing with your business when you're thinking about your business and the marketing that you're doing behind it. What are you doing? Are you just giving facts? Are you just telling everyone, like, this is how many chemicals we spray when we spray for pest control? Like, nobody cares about how many ounces you're spraying. They don't care about that. So you want to connect with them. All right, guys. Well, this week, your homework, obviously, is to kind of find that spark. What was that story? Why did you start the business? Maybe it was to spend more time with your family and, get out from under the man who was, preventing you from going to soccer games and activities with your family and whatever that is. What was the spark that started the company in the first place? What was the struggle, you know, that which could kind of be part of that spark, right? The story of why, and then the success, right? How you were like, this is better and we are better because we went through this. And so now we're providing you this service or this product because we understand. We understand your frustrations, right? So, all right, everybody, we really appreciate you. We are excited for December. Like I said, last month of the year. I can't believe it's already flown by. I mean, goodness gracious, it's going to be January and we're all going to be talking about taxes. Getting everything ready, right? So, and goals and all that. It's exciting. I love the beginning. I love the end of the year and I love the beginning of the year. It's always so fun. All right, everybody. Well, we sure appreciate you. We love you. Like, share, comment, and we will check you guys out on the next episode of SoTellUs Time.